Storytime with Kasper. Today's reading is an excerpt from The Dark Archer by Cano. Feorin! Bene managed, but just as Feorin turned around to respond, he watched Bene fall to the ground. Clearer! The woman Bene saved dropped to his knees beside him, trying to figure out how to help, when Feorin grabbed her rather brusquely and ran with her, calling to all the people to either stay inside or come with him as he ran. The danger was real. Dusk had come. A man staggered out of the tavern, falling on his face in the dirt of the street. Moaning, he lifted his head, snorting and spitting out the dirt. Bene watched as he rolled over and sat up, trying to wipe his face clean with his rather dirty sleeves. He wished he could speak to the guy, tell him to run, that he was a wraith on the verge of losing control, but his contact with people was so very limited. He could speak with darklings and Feorin. The man stumbled over to Bene, a look of concern on his face. "How ye be, friend? Me eyes be failing me, but ye look like you're a black cloud ready to rise." Bene was losing the fight. Just as the man knelt down to touch his shoulder, Bene could feel the thick binding sewn through his lips unravel. He had lost. His body lurched upwards, and he feared carrying another's suffering upon his shoulders. But Devani's attack severely weakened him, for he took the full brunt of the magical onslaught, absorbing it all so the woman being attacked would not be killed. But Bene refused to give in, continuing to grapple with his nature. Someone had to help, but Feorin knew better. "Friend, you all right?" Somehow Bene was able to keep his mouth shut, although the binding over his lips had been loosed, and with his eyes closed he focused all his might into dominance over the urge. The pain was excruciating. His body shook in response. He wanted to scream out, he wanted to run and hide, but any movement beyond his tense self would only result in everything he hated about himself. "Friend!" There was a hand on his back, but Bene kept himself from reacting, keeping his eyes clenched tight. Kneeling there, he was as small as he could possibly be. Nothing else in the world but him. No one to feed off, and slowly his mind drifted off into space and time. He felt the distant yet familiar sting of the cord being replaced within his lips. He stood up, battling to maintain control over himself, the pain feeling like it was intensified 1,000 times in the motion, as though 1,000 knives set on fire, using a long burning oil, was shoved into his body all at once, repeatedly, the searing agony coupled with the feeling of flesh laid open over dragon's breath without the hope of cauterization. "Gods be merciful!" Perna gasped as she watched in horror as Guy was only partially seen behind the black smoke rising and falling in intervals. Guy, in his drunken stupor, was trying to be helpful to the man, but was unable to get any reply, becoming agitated in the process. Perna wanted to go to him, to pull him from whatever danger the satyr had saved her from, but the concerned look on the satyr's face was not one to be trifled with. The strange dark vapour emanating from the entity continued its rise high into the sky, and Perna attempted to use her mastery over air to bring Guy to them, but for the first time since learning the power, she found herself without any control, her ability noticeably weakened from whatever her attacker had done to her. "The gods care nothing for the follies of mortals," was all the satyr could manage as he looked on with a helpless look scrawled across his face. He swallowed hard, and if she was not mistaken, he was going to try something stupid. She reached out and grabbed his arm. "I want Guy safe as well, but he's not your responsibility." Perna looked over at her friend. "He is mine." And with that she stood up. "No, stay," the satyr replied. "I know the darkling. He is a good wraith, I guess." The thought felt foreign to him as he said it, for he had only ever seen Bene as a good man. "I might be able to save your friend, but only as long as Bene continues to fight it. I am running out of time. Sit here. I will return as soon as I can." Perna watched helplessly as the satyr left, confused and bereft of hope in the situation. She had a vantage point, but lost the satyr near one of the buildings as the smoke began to spread, the darkness beginning to envelop the rest of the street, spreading both outward and upward. She could no longer see Guy. Perna's heart jumped into her throat with the thought of losing Guy, or anyone else. She had been able to avoid killing, and was keen on keeping it that way, but the world began to seem too cruel for kindness. She sat there, each brief moment a lifetime of anticipation and horror and wonder. Doubt cascaded through her mind, drowning out the hope the longer it took for the satyr to return with her friend, so much so that she started thinking the worst, that the darkness had taken them both. Feorin could barely see. The darkness now covered the majority of the little town. A wind swirled into the vortex of smoke in the dusky hues of the late evening, a vortex created solely by Bene, who now stood in its epicentre. The drunken man was still there, flailing about while trying to gain some semblance of stability, but from what Feorin could see, the man was so drunk he had no clue as to what was going on around him. It was entirely possible the wind held the man up. Each step toward the man reminded Feorin of his days on the front, where every step was fought for, paid with the blood of the fallen. Not today. No one would fall, and he would help his friend keep his conscience as clear as possible, while saving another from a possible death. Just as he had neared the man within a comfortable distance, Feorin leapt. Once he hit the air, he felt the air pushing him, and he grabbed the drunkard as he was carried through the air, securing the man in the same motion, and ducking and rolling, cautious to keep the man in control. Feorin finished his roll, and without slowing he found his feet, and bolted out of the twisting winds as quickly as he could. A quick glance back, and most of the town lay invisible, cloaked from view, between the darkness of Bene and the dusk becoming light. There was no way to determine how long he'd been in there. It felt only like mere moments, but as he ran around the last remaining building, free of Bene's influence, he got the sinking feeling time within the vortex was affected somehow. "Hey! I be flying!" came the slurred speech of the man, still held fast under Feorin's arm, and the satyr chuckled at the prospect. "Yeah!" Feorin yelled back, as he continued to run to the far outskirts before making his way back to the girl he had left. "You are flying, friend." "Shite! And they all said I be an idiot for thinking I fly." Just listening to the man was comical. "Just relax, sir. I will get you to safety." "Whither ye be flying, I be flying. Don't much know about whether we be going, but I be right beside you." The drunk man half chuckled to himself, and Feorin felt it in the reflex of the man's body. Then he continued, "Hey, where be flying us to?" "Someplace safe." Feorin turned around and looked back, seeing the town a short way off, and stopped, getting a feel for where he was. He looked around and saw the girl coming toward him. He put the man down when the man said, "What the shite? I don't think I say land, more fly, up." Feorin was nearly dying inside, trying to keep his composure, while watching the man repeat "up" and jumping in the air, expecting to fly again. "Guy?" said the girl as she came near. "Pern! There ye! I just flied, you see me?" Feorin looked back to see the smoke in the town receding. He could even make out the faint silhouette of the wraith he called friend. "Guy, you gave me a horrible fright." Then she turned to Feorin and smiled. "Thank you. I've never met your kind before, but if you were any indication, well..." Her smile was enough for him. "My kind? I am not indicative of my kind. They remain cruel and warmongering." He offered a solemn assessment. "Pan!" "Yes, Guy?" "I be so damn drunk, me feet barely be keeping neath me." Guy laughed. "Hell, me vision be blurred as shite too. Ha!" Feorin watched as the woman leaned over to catch the man from falling over and placed his arm over her shoulder. Yeah, your face is dirty too, Guy. Been kissing the dirt? Hey now, who I be kissing is me business. The guy was clearly in a drunken stupor. The companions walked a short distance toward the boulder, where the girl gingerly sat with Guy, with his back to the rock. Feorin watched them quietly. Hey, satyr, come join us. Tell me the name of our rescuer. My name is Feorin, former soldier, as all satyrs are born into. Under threat of death, I have been exiled from my homeland. You called the man who saved me Bene. Feorin nodded in return as he approached them. He looked down at Guy, who was passed out and snoring off to his side, drool already running down his cheek and into the grass. What is he? Came the follow-up question. He is a darkling, a wraith. Does that not mean soulless? Yes. Feorin found the young woman easy to speak with. She had a charm about her, a means of putting fears at ease. Bene here is unique. He fights against his nature as a darkling, for he was a man of utmost honour before he was forced into the life he now has. What happened? Best I can tell, betrayal. But the man he was lives on. He simply has to remember that sometimes. The smoke had completely dissipated and the night was near complete. Where did he go? The woman asked, a look of concern on her face as she began to scan every inch of surrounding environment she could. Worry not. He is probably seeking something upon which he can feed. The plan was to stay here the night. First thing in the morning I need to buy some supplies so we can continue. Oh? To where be you headed? We seek the edge of the world. Bene wishes to seek his soul and be reunited, that he might find peace and release from the suffering he endures. He may even seek death. Feorin dropped his head as he thought about the prospect. Bene was a new friend, but somehow the satyr had come to admire and respect the wraith, trusting Bene even with his life. No, you seek the ferretary of souls. Yes we do. It is important to Bene, and he saved my life twice. I owe it to him to try and find the place, that he might find the end he so desperately seeks. So you wish him dead? The woman failed to understand. Not at all. I simply wish his suffering to find an end, which is what he wishes for himself. I am willing to let go of my friend, if it means he finds peace. Feorin realized he had no name for the woman. And your name is Pern, is it? The woman grinned. No, she laughed. Guy here just enjoys shortening everything he can, including my name. My name is Perna. My people would be those of Alira from across the sea in Tyrillian. Tales reaching this side of the world say that Alira no longer has any people. Must not be true. No, it is true. I was born in Alira, but I was not raised there. I'm the last living soul from that land. It is said that the animals there are cruel now. I have not returned in a very long time. To Feorin's mind, with this last thought, it appeared as though Perna waxed nostalgic. How long? I was a baby when I was taken away to live with the immortals. Wait, the immortals? They are real? In his nearly 250 years, he had heard of the tales of the immortals of Tyrillian, somewhere in the far north, but always they were nothing more than fairy tales, fancy and little else, whimsical stories of a land so far away. Yet, standing before him was someone who knew the immortals. Perna laughed. Yes, they are real. And how long were you with them? Nearly 600 years. Perna gasped then, covering her mouth as her eyes went wide. It was as if she realized she had just responded without thinking. Feorin chuckled. Worry not, Perna. Your secret is safely hidden here. He gestured towards his abdomen. She smiled at his gesture, a hidden uncertainty deep within the vast emeralds she had for eyes, but it was a genuine smile nonetheless. It would have been too easy to miss the doubts she carried, but Feorin had a keen eye, and was quick to take note of the little things, for they often held the most truth. With a gaze fixed on Guy, Perna's look softened, a gladness seen in the small ticks in her cheeks. There was no dilation of her eyes, however, which told Feorin theirs was not a romantic relationship, but that she cared for her friends deeply. That kind of loyalty is rare indeed. What he saw reminded him of what he felt with Bene. To where be you and Guy travelling? We have no agenda, no end goal in mind. Then Perna looked up and met Feorin's intense gaze. Perhaps we were looking for you and Bene. What do you mean? Feorin asked, looking over as Guy rolled slightly, arms limp and his body looking very much contoured to the ground, as opposed to the other way round. When I was sent on my way, Perna explained, my master told me he was sending me far from home. No real reason as to why or what it was I needed to seek, but it seems destiny brought us together. Feorin laughed, maybe a little too hard at her sentiments. Before he could say anything, Perna, with a perplexed look on her face, asked, Why do you laugh at me? Oh, you were serious. Feorin's face went white. I'm sorry, Perna, truly. The idea of destiny and fate, no. Out here there are no such things. There either is or is not. Either we do or we do not. Action taken is not predicated on belief of unseen external forces. What gods may exist serve only themselves. Maybe it was different in Tyrillian, but here, my new friend, here the gods are reflections of the worst of us. Bene had yet to see what happened to or around him. All he was certain of was the fact that he could control himself. Although he was unsure as to how, he no longer felt anything or anyone present, but feared opening his eyes even so. Feeling unsteady on his own feet, he began to move, finally gaining the courage to allow his eyes their sight again, and he turned slightly toward the bridge leading over the stream and beyond the lee. The strain of his internal fight felt more taxing than the attack he absorbed. His mind was in a state of tearing itself apart piece by piece, stretching to the point of breaking, but refusing to permit any respite from the persistent agony. Somewhere within his body he felt as though he should have been able to fend off Devani's attack, but he had no idea how to do that. Thoughts conjured in his mind were filled with the darkness of his killing everyone close to him, of watching those he had fought so hard to rescue, even from himself, die at his hand. It was so real, as though he already did it, and the weight of that, laid upon his already burdened shoulders, was too much. The future would be cruel to him, he knew, for he could not hope to fully control it at every turn. Those around him would die. He looked back, knowing Feorin was most likely near where they had been standing, prior to their intervening to protect the girl from Devani, or whatever it was she called herself now. In that moment, he made the decision to press on without his friend. Feorin was good and kind, and could take care of himself, but Bene could not lie to himself. He would miss the satyr. Bene ambled along until he was lost, a slightly darker point in a nighttime sea of grass.